Billionaire's mother tears Maid's dress apart. What the billionaire did next left everyone stunned. The Whitmore estate on Meeting Street was the kind of place Charleston tour guides pointed to from horse-drawn carriages. White columns like sentries, ironwork balconies curling like seafoam, and an oak-lined drive draped with Spanish moss that made everything feel older than sin. Inside, the dining hall glowed, crystal chandeliers, low candlelight, portraits of Whitmore's past glowering from gilt frames as if they still signed checks and judged manners from the grave. String music drifted in from the foyer. Silver clinked. Voices murmured. Money breathed. Maya Williams had learned to move through rooms like this as if she were invisible. Quiet steps, sure hands, a chin that never dipped too low and never lifted high enough to offend. She'd been raised on the edge of everything Charleston pretended not to see. Small apartments with thin walls, double shifts, a mother who taught her that dignity was a posture you held when life took every reason you had to keep it. Tonight, though, invisibility had deserted her. She could feel eyes on her as if the chandeliers had turned into 1,000 cold suns trained on one small star. The necklace lay cool against her skin, simple, gold, a small oval charm with a faintly etched magnolia no one noticed unless they looked closely. Her mother's. Myra had worn it every day until the illness took the weight from her fingers and with it the clasp from her neck. When Maya fastened it that evening, she had done it for courage, not spectacle, for the quiet promise it held that she could stand in any room and survive it. Eleanor Whitmore arrived late, because Eleanor liked rooms to bend when she entered. Black silk, a string of white pearls like frozen lightning at her throat, gloves matched to her scorn. She accepted compliments with the mild, distant grace of a woman who believed compliments were the natural weather around her. She took her seat at the head of the table beneath a portrait of her late husband, Edward, and tipped a single glance down the table to where Maya stood by a sideboard, arranging a row of reedle stems in perfect soldierly formation. The glance snagged on gold. Eleanor's posture sharpened, the way a hound's ear twitches at the snap of a twig. Dinner advanced like a parade. She crabbed soup served in bone china, roast lamb with rosemary, haricots verts lined up as neatly as soldiers. Conversation rolled and broke in gentle waves, foundations, acquisitions, whose summered where, whose son made partner, whose daughter made a scene. Maya did the math of service in her head, turning bodies and plates and wine into routes the way other people navigated freeways. But with every pass, Eleanor's eyes landed on that small gold charm and did not move. The room began to tilt. It happened between the lamb and the lemon tart. A thin wire of silence strung itself through the chatter and tightened. Eleanor laid her napkin down very carefully, the way people handle explosives. She turned in her chair and let her voice crack across the table. "Where the hell did you get that necklace?" Chairs scraped. Forks paused midair. The cellist in the foyer hit a sour note, and then pretended he hadn't. Maya felt the heat rush her neck, her hand flying reflexively to the charm as if she could tuck it back into her skin. She opened her mouth to answer. She wasn't sure what she'd say except "It's my mother's." But Eleanor was already standing. The black silk moved like a storm. A gloved hand reached, not for the necklace but for the edge of Maya's blouse, and with one brutal, practiced yank Eleanor tore the front seam. The sound, fabric giving up, hissed through the hall. White cotton parted, exposing the satin line of a modest undergarment and the small gold oval that swung once, twice, catching candlelight like a signal flare. Someone gasped. Someone else laughed the wrong kind of laugh and then swallowed it whole. A wine glass trembled and chimed against porcelain. Maya didn't feel embarrassed first, she felt erased. That's what the public kind of humiliation did. It took your outline and tried to redraw it as something else. She grabbed the torn edges to cover herself, fingers shaking with the suddenness of it, eyes stinging but dry. 100 rules flickered through her head. Don't cry, don't plead, don't flee, stand up straight, and behind them all, the steady cadence of her mother's voice, hold your head. They can't take what you don't hand them. You thought no one would notice? Eleanor's voice was low and lethal. Wearing that as if it belongs to you. Floating through this room like you earned a place at this table. She didn't touch the necklace. She didn't have to. The words did what her hands had already started. You think you can dress yourself up and slip into our world unnoticed? Somewhere to Maya's left, a man at the board of a hospital cleared his throat. A judge's wife looked avid in a way that made Maya understand suddenly why gossip survived wars. 2 seats down, Charlotte Avery, pearls, perfect posture, an heirloom sapphire winking at her collarbone, watched without moving, the way you watch a match you struck find its way to kindling. A chair crashed back. The thunder of it rolled under the table and roared into the quiet. Mother! Lucas Whitmore crossed the room like a man who had stood up to fire before. The tuxedo jacket came off his shoulders in one clean motion and was around Maya's in the next, a shelter thrown the instant the sky split open. He stepped between her and the rest of Charleston and looked at Eleanor as if the portrait over her shoulder might step down to referee. You've gone too far. His voice did not rise. It didn't need to. Quiet held sharper steel. Eleanor didn't flinch. She never conceded ground she could turn into theater. She pivoted slightly, the pearls at her throat catching light, and spoke to Lucas while staring at Maya. You know what that is, don't you? It belonged to her mother. She let the word flatten, mother as accusation. A maid who learned too quickly how to be indispensable. Always so grateful. Always so close. Maya felt the room tilt again, not from shame now but from anger, hot and clarifying. Myra had made beds with hands that ached and brewed tea that calmed stormed nerves. She had listened the way good listeners do, with no ambition beyond kindness. If Edward Whitmore had leaned on that kindness in a house that forgot how to offer it, that was on Edward, not on the woman who'd known how to pour it without spilling. She was just staff, Eleanor said softly, and the softness was worse than any scream. Trained to please. She made him feel important. Eleanor's mouth shaped the last word like a blade. And now her daughter wears her trinket like a flag. Maya's hands stopped shaking. She let the jacket settle on her shoulders, squared them, and met Eleanor's eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried to the end of the table and the foyer beyond. My mother never seduced anyone. She earned her respect the way decent people do, by showing up. By keeping confidence. By telling the truth when it cost her. She glanced at the portrait over Eleanor's shoulder, then back. If your husband trusted her, that speaks to him. If you hated her for it, that speaks to you. Someone whispered. Good Lord. Half prayer, half thrill. The cellist, poor man, remembered a hymn and then abandoned it. Eleanor's smile thinned into something that showed the bone underneath. She taught you well, then. She lifted her chin a fraction. Look at you now. Wearing my son's coat like it belongs to you. Lucas moved before Maya had to. He turned, and when he looked at Maya, the anger in his face softened into something that had been waiting a long time to be said aloud. He faced the room. He faced his mother. He chose his words the way you place stones to cross a river you can't afford to fall into. I love her, he said. Each word clicked into place. I've loved her for a long time. And I intend to marry her. The room inhaled and forgot how to exhale. Scandal scuttled from chair to chair like a living thing. Did he say marry? The maid? Unthinkable. A man at the far end chuckled without humor and muttered. Well, you can't deny she's beautiful. As if beauty were a verdict and not a person. Charlotte didn't gasp. Charlotte never wasted theatrics she couldn't control. She pressed her napkin once, precisely, between forefinger and thumb and lifted her eyes to measure the damage. She and Lucas had grown up at the same Christmas parties and cotillions, along the same pews at St. Michael's, on the same parade route every spring. Society had written their names next to each other in pencil decades ago, and never imagined anyone would reach for an eraser. Charlotte felt the eraser now, cheap, unwelcome, effective, and set her jaw the way women do when they find their future rearranged by someone else's courage. Maya stood very still inside Lucas's jacket, and realized there are moments when love does not arrive quietly. Sometimes it kicks the door down in front of witnesses and forces everyone to declare themselves. She swallowed. She didn't look away from Eleanor. Across the table, Eleanor placed her napkin on her plate with exquisite care, a queen abdicating nothing. You imagine yourself immune to consequence, she said, almost gently. But this house remembers. This city remembers. Blood remembers. She let the last word settle like ash. Lucas did not blink. Then let it remember this, he said. He turned, his voice dropping for Maya alone. Come on. We're done here. They moved together, past crystal and cutlery, and the kind of faces that always look as if they're about to send a note by messenger. Maya felt the jacket's weight and the necklace's lighter, older weight, and thought of her mother washing her hands at the end of every day as if she were rinsing off the whole world and starting again. As they reached the doorway, whispers rose behind them and braided into a single sound that had no words in it, only appetite. At the threshold, Maya glanced back once. Eleanor stood under Edward's portrait like a verdict that refused to be appealed. Charlotte, perfectly composed, watched with a look that wasn't pity and wasn't shock. It was a promise. This isn't over, Charlotte's eyes said. No, Maya thought, surprising herself with the steadiness of it. It isn't. They didn't hurry. That was Lucas's choice. To hurry would have looked like retreat, and retreat was the only thing Eleanor could taste as victory. So he set an even pace down the long corridor, one hand steady at the small of Maya's back, his jacket wrapped around her like a promise. Staff flattened against the wainscoting as they passed, eyes dropping and then dragging back up despite themselves. The Whitmore portraits watched, oil and judgment, while the chandeliers hummed with whispers the room had not been allowed to say out loud. In the side vestibule where the marble gave way to old hard pine, Lucas stopped. The air smelled of lemon oil and salt coming in off the harbor. He unclipped the onyx cufflinks he'd inherited at 19 and slid them into his pocket, as if such heirlooms were suddenly too heavy to wear. I'm taking you home, he said. This is your home, Maya answered, and heard the steadiness in her own voice like a surprise. He looked at her then, not at the tear in her blouse hidden by his jacket, not at the necklace, but at the woman inside both. Where you're safe is home, he said, and the certainty in it made her chest ache. They slipped out a side door beneath a wrought iron balcony, past the camellias planted 3 generations ago, and through the service gate that had carried a century of deliveries and discretion. The night air cooled the heat in her face. Across Meeting Street, a carriage rattled by, tourists laughing at a joke they'd forget by morning. In the driveway, the driver saw Lucas and sprang to open the back door of the black town car, but Lucas shook his head. I'll drive. They didn't speak again until the estate was a receding outline and the live oaks turned to rows of storefronts shuttering for the night. Maya kept one palm on the necklace, feeling the familiar oval warm under her touch, as if Myra's hands had been there just moments before. She would have hated that room, Maya said softly. My mother? Lucas asked, but he knew. My mother, she said, and she told him, briefly, without rhetoric, about casseroles carried up back stairs, about a man who grieved hard and needed an ear, about a woman who knew how to listen without stepping where she wasn't invited. Respect isn't seduction, Maya finished. Your father knew the difference. So do I, he said, and the way he tightened his grip on the wheel made her believe him. He took her to a narrow brick row house on Vanderhorst that belonged to a friend who owed him favors and kept a spare key beneath a ceramic turtle on the stoop. Inside, the lights were warm, the furniture simple, and everything smelled faintly of clean cotton. He put water on for tea like a man raised to do practical things when nothing else would do, then disappeared down the hall and came back with a soft, oversized t-shirt still folded from the dryer. Bathroom's down the hall, he said. I'll step out. Don't, she said. Just turn around. He did. She changed quickly, slid out of the ruined blouse, slid into borrowed cotton, and surrendered his jacket back onto her shoulders because the weight of it steadied her. When he turned, his gaze didn't flicker. He handed her the tea and touched his forehead to hers just long enough for both of them to take a breath they had been holding since the first rip of fabric. I meant what I said, he whispered. All of it. I know, she said. But words don't end a war. They start one. He smiled then, small and fierce. Good. I've always been better at building than retreating. Back on Meeting Street, Eleanor took her brandy in the small sitting room she preferred for private victories. She did not pace. She never wasted energy that didn't show. In the mirror over the mantel, a woman with perfect posture and eyes rimmed in fatigue watched her back. Myra, she said aloud, and the name sounded like a word she had meant never to say again. She had not hated the maid at first. She had hated the ease with which Edward had spoken to her, about everything that mattered and nothing that did. Over months it had felt like mold in a house you couldn't find, the smell of it everywhere, the source always just out of reach. She had tried charm, coldness, distance, a raise, a dismissal. It had not mattered. Myra had stayed dignified even when pushed to the margins. Eleanor had underestimated dignity, how sturdy it looks in the corner until it refuses to move. She set down her glass with a click and pulled the bell. Clara answered. Clara, who'd been in this house long enough to know which drawers stuck in summer, and which members of the old families tipped on Christmas. Her hands were good hands, lined and steady. I want her gone, Eleanor said, soft as silk. You will persuade her. Clara didn't blink. Miss Maya isn't easily moved. Then tell her what the city will do to her, Eleanor replied, sliding an envelope across the table with 2 fingers. Tell her what I will do to her without lifting a finger at all. Clara glanced at the envelope and left it where it lay. It isn't money she needs, she said, and Eleanor felt the insult like a draft. Then give her the truth, Eleanor said, voice cool. This family breaks what it can't absorb. I'd rather it be quick. When Clara was gone, Eleanor exhaled slowly, counted to 5, and made another decision. She lifted the receiver of the old brass phone that had kept more secrets than a confessional. She dialed a number she knew would be answered. Charlotte, she said when the click came. You were very composed tonight. I'm always composed, Charlotte Avery answered, and even over the line the steel in her breeding showed. But composure isn't surrender. You know that. I do, Eleanor said. I could use your clarity. Then we start with the only leverage men of empire understand, Charlotte said. Reputation. If Lucas insists on choosing her, let him feel how expensive that choice is. Eleanor's lips curved, not quite a smile. Do you intend to ruin my son to ruin the girl? I intend to save him, Charlotte said. She let the lie sit between them like a lace doily covering a stain. And I'm not alone. You and I, this once, we want the same thing. Eleanor looked at her reflection and saw a woman who had always preferred alliances to friendships. Very well, she said. We will move together. Clara found Maya in the morning by the garden wall where the brick held the night's cool. The jacket was still around her shoulders. The necklace caught a slice of Atlantic light. Maya had slept little, but sleeping wasn't what steadied her. Standing did. They sent me, Clara said, honest because she refused to make cruelty wear polite clothes. They want you to go. I know, Maya said. It won't be fair, Clara warned. It will be quiet and slow. People will smile while they do it. Every room will ask you a question you can't answer without losing something. I've watched this house choose softer hearts than yours. Maya touched the magnolia on the charm with her thumb. My mother left this house when it declared itself. She didn't leave because she was wrong. She left because she was tired. And you? Clara asked. I'm tired, Maya said. Then she lifted her chin. And I'm not leaving. Clara's mouth pressed into something like pride and fear folded together. Then you must fight wise, she said. They don't swing. They set tables. They invite you to sit and then measure how you pick up the fork. Who is they? Maya asked, though she knew. Mrs. Whitmore, Clara said. And Charlotte Avery. Charlotte. Maya let the name settle like a puzzle piece she'd expected. She watched me like I'd stolen furniture. She watched you like you'd rearranged it, Clara said. It's worse. Maya laughed once, short and real. Thank you for telling me the truth. I can do more than tell, Clara said. From her apron she produced a small wrapped parcel, needle, thread, a clean white blouse folded with perfect corners. Stitches for the places they tried to rip. Wear the jacket as long as you like, but don't dress your wounds in borrowed cloth. Maya took the parcel and felt tears press hot to the back of her eyes. She blinked them down. You're the only person in this house who looks at me and doesn't see a rumor. I see a girl who stands like a woman, Clara said. And that frightens people who've mistaken posture for power. By mid-morning, Meeting Street remembered how to pretend nothing had happened. The dining room gleamed. The stain was already swabbed from the board where the wine had jumped when the blouse tore. Servants moved like they always did, efficient, invisible. Only their glances gave them away. On the front page of the Post and Courier, a ribbon-cutting smiled from a photograph. Inside, on page 2, a column about an upcoming museum benefit named the families expected to attend. Whitmore was a headline, not a scandal, because the paper understood what paid for its ink. In the study, Lucas stood at the window and watched the oak leaves stir like an army too polite to advance. He had set a dozen calls, cancelled half, kept the ones that protected payrolls. He was a man who had learned early that a good company runs on promises delivered and crises managed quietly. But this was not a supply chain or a securities filing. This was his mother's wrath measured against his own spine. His phone buzzed, 3 texts in a row from board members who thought concern looked like friendship when it arrived in complete sentences. Optics. Stability. Timing. He deleted them and typed a single message to Maya, "Meet me in the garden at noon." She came on time. He loved that about her. Her respect for clocks even when time felt like a trick aristocrats played on everyone else. She wore the clean white blouse Clara had folded for her, the collar crisp, the necklace bright as a sign she refused to take down. "You shouldn't have to mend what someone else tore," he said. "I didn't mend it for her," she said. "I mended it for me. I'm going to have to take you into rooms that will try to break you," he warned. "Rooms as bad as last night, worse because they'll smile while they measure." "Are you sure?" Her answer was not brave, it was factual. "They're already in the room," she said. "We might as well turn on the lights." He drew a breath. "There's a benefit Friday at the Gibbies. Everyone who counts will be there." "I don't count?" she asked, and he shook his head quickly. "You matter," he said. "That's different. And more dangerous." "Then I'll go," she said. "Not to perform. To stand?" He reached for her hand, then stopped himself and offered his arm instead, formal, deliberate. It made her smile. She placed her hand lightly at the crook of his elbow. Somewhere beyond the hedges, a camera shutter clicked, soft, predatory. He felt her stiffen. He didn't turn his head. "They've started," she said. "Let them," he answered, and though bravado sometimes sounded like youth, in him it sounded like a blueprint he meant to build. Across town, Charlotte sat in her mother's drawing room with a cup of tea she had no intention of drinking. She had already made the calls a woman like her knew how to make, quiet, never written down. A loan of address to the wrong woman at the right time. A word to a museum patron about guest lists and sidelines. A suggestion to a photographer who specialized in charity pages and scandal. Her phone lit with a message, "Friday confirmed." She'll be on his arm. Charlotte smoothed the skirt of her sapphire day dress and allowed herself one small, honest thought. "You don't belong where I belong," she told the air, and then she did what the old families had always done, she planned a scene and called it tradition. Back at the estate, Eleanor closed a letter bearing the tidy seal of the gala committee. She pressed a fingertip to wax as if blessing it. In the corner of her eye, the portrait of Edward remained where it always had, steady, fair. She missed him as a man and resented him as a memory. "You were too easily charmed," she said to the paint. "I am not." Outside, under the magnolia, Maya and Lucas stood shoulder to shoulder, already casting longer shadows together than either had alone. The day smelled of brine and gardenias, and something electric in the air that comes before a storm. Maya's fingers found the necklace again. She didn't pray, she negotiated with herself. Hold your head. Choose your ground. Fight wise. The storm did not rush. It gathered, quiet, patient, expensive. And when it came, it would come in silk and crystal, with an orchestra and cameras, and 100 perfect smiles sharpened into blades. Charleston woke to chatter as reliable as tide. Who was invited to the Gibbies' benefit, what they would wear, where the endowment would land. In houses with good china and better secrets, the week arranged itself around a single evening dressed up as philanthropy. Inside the Whitmore estate, the preparations sounded like battle: pressed linens, polished shoes, phone calls that shifted guest lists by inches and outcomes by miles. Charlotte Avery came late morning with a ribbon box balanced on her palms, the way a saint would carry an offering if saints wore couture. She asked for Maya politely and was shown to a small anteroom off the east hall where sunlight fell in a narrow band across the floorboards. "I wanted to extend an olive branch," Charlotte said when Maya entered, voice warm enough to fool anyone who hadn't watched her in the dining room. "Charleston can be unkind to new arrivals. Let me help you meet it halfway." "What kind of help?" Maya asked. "Cloth," Charlotte said, lifting the lid. Inside lay an emerald silk gown, the fabric shimmering like bottled evening. The neckline was low, the back lower, a dress that turned a room into a mirror and asked the wearer to live inside its reflection. "It will be a beautiful night," Charlotte added softly. "You'll want to look like you belong." Maya held her gaze. "Belonging isn't a costume." "No," Charlotte agreed, smile tight. "But people often decide it is. I'm merely assisting perception." Refusing would become a story. Accepting was already one. Maya inclined her head. "Thank you." Charlotte's eyes flicked to the gold at Maya's throat, the magnolia charm. "You do carry heirlooms well," she said, and left before the compliment could curdle into what it really was. Clara found Maya an hour later studying the gown as if it might reveal where to place the first stitch of a different life. "It's a trap," Clara said without preface. "I know," Maya answered. "But sometimes the only way through a snare is forward. Will you help me make it mine?" They worked at the sewing table in Clara's small room under the eaves, hands quick, quiet. The neckline rose, the hem eased to movement rather than spectacle. An ivory lace shawl from Clara's cedar chest took the edge off the emerald's gleam. By evening, the dress no longer announced a debut. It declared a stance. The Gibbies Museum glowed like a promise. Marble floors held 1,000 footsteps without complaint. Chandeliers made winter constellations indoors. Donors' names gleamed from small brass plaques as if money could be translated into immortality. The string quartet tucked beneath a spiral stair was better than the one who played at houses, because institutions bought talent the way families bought pedigree. Lucas and Maya entered together, arm in arm, and the room did what rooms do when presented with a fact they don't like. It pretended not to notice, and then noticed all at once. Heads turned. The low electrical hum of scandal tightened and sang. "Mr. Whitmore," someone said. "How gracious of you to support the new wing." The man's eyes never left Maya. "Miss Williams," another murmured, too smoothly for politeness. "How lovely to see new faces in our circles." Maya smiled the way one does at a draft in a beautiful house. The lace shawl softened the green. The magnolia at her throat caught a stray glitter and turned it into daylight. She stood the way Myra had taught her, weight even, gaze level, chin neither raised nor lowered to anyone's expectation. She did not perform. She endured, with poise sharp enough to be mistaken for polish. Charlotte arrived in sapphire, a color she wore like a signature. The museum's photographer, alert, eager, conveniently nearby, caught her greeting Lucas and then pivoted lightly to frame Maya against a painting titled Allegory of Ambition. Charlotte did not look at the camera. She did not have to. Angles were her native language. "How brave," Charlotte said when she reached them, her voice pitched for every ear within 5 feet. "To step into a room like this, and so soon." She turned to Maya. "You wear it beautifully. I must admit, I didn't expect restraint." "Restraint is what people call strength when it doesn't flatter them," Maya replied, tone cool, even. A few heads tilted. Someone smiled into their champagne. Eleanor did not approach. She allowed herself to be approached, the way queens do when they want courtiers to show their hands. She received condolences for a scandal she had not suffered and thanks for a generosity she had carefully documented. When the board chair toasted legacy, she lifted her glass and let her gaze drift, once, over the top of the crowd to where her son stood with the maid who would not leave. Then she turned away as if from art that failed to move her. Little things happened in clusters, as they always do. A banker's wife, pearls like moons, leaned to a friend and said just loud enough, "She moves like she's rehearsed it." A docile laugh followed, then another, like dogs answering each other across a street. Lucas heard the word rehearsed and felt it stick to his ribs. He forced his face into neutrality. Inside, he felt the first thin crack he had promised himself he would never allow. "Walk with me," he said to Maya, and they circled the galleries as if they had come to see paintings. He pointed out a landscape he had loved as a boy, the one with light that seemed to come from behind the frame, the one his father had stood before with hands clasped behind his back, explaining brushwork as if texture could save a marriage. "They're trying to write you," Maya said quietly, eyes on the canvas. "Make me into a character they recognize." "What if we refuse the genre?" he asked, not entirely joking. "Then they'll call it poor taste," she said, and he huffed a laugh that died quickly. At the silent auction tables, Charlotte paused beside a lot titled Emerald Sea and pretended to consider bidding. The photographer lifted his camera again. In the corner of the frame, Maya's necklace caught light. In the foreground, Charlotte's smile didn't reach her eyes. The picture would look, in print, like magnanimity flanked by hubris. Narrative, purchased for the price of a lens. By the time the quartet shifted from Vivaldi to Ellington, because even old money likes to pretend at modern, Maya's spine ached from the work of standing. She had answered questions that were not questions, declined invitations disguised as traps, and accepted 2 genuine compliments from women old enough to have lost patience with performance. She kept a tally, privately, of who mistook civility for consent. When they finally stepped into the cool dark of the street and the door closed on the last cadence of polite applause, silence fell between them in the car, not hostile, not warm, heavy, like humidity before lightning. "You were extraordinary," Lucas said, staring out at the blurred storefronts. "Extraordinary doesn't change what some people decided to see before I walked in," Maya answered. He turned to her, a fracture of frustration in his voice he wished weren't there. "You think I don't know that? I think you know," she said softly. "I think knowing and carrying are different weights." He flexed his hands on his knees, the gesture of a man who built things with deals instead of wood but still had the urge to lift. "The board has opinions. Investors, too. They frame it as stewardship. They frame it as fear," she corrected. "And they'll sell you your own spine back to you if you let them." He looked at her then, really looked, at the lace Clara had chosen, the altered line of the dress, the necklace that had started all this, the woman who had not once ducked. Love surged, clean and certain, and behind it, like a shadow tacked to a ship, the word that had followed him all night, rehearsed. "Don't let their words find roots," Maya said, as if she had reached into his chest and read the label on the seed. "Doubt grows faster than trust in rooms like that. You have to pull it the second you see green." He nodded, swallowed, nodded again. "I meant what I said," he told her, as if repetition could be mortar. "I know," she said. "That's why they'll come harder." At the museum's service entrance, the photographer scrolled through proofs and grinned. He had Charlotte's welcome framed like an embrace and Maya's strength framed like trespass, which is exactly how subscribers preferred their morality: legible, purchasable. He texted a sample to a number Charlotte had provided and received a single word in reply: perfect. In a corner booth at a restaurant that stayed open for the right names, Charlotte slid her phone across to Eleanor. 2 images. 2 stories. 1 inevitable headline. "Planned it," Eleanor said without blinking. Charlotte's smile was serene. "It's already rooted." Back at the row house on Vanderhorst, Maya stood at the kitchen sink and washed the lace shawl carefully by hand. Lucas had offered to send it out. She had said no. "Some things you tended yourself," Behind her, he leaned in the doorway, tie undone, expression tired in the way men look when they have wrestled themselves more than any opponent. I don't want you to have to do that again, he said, meaning the museum, the room, the war. I will, she said, not unkindly. Until the rooms change or we build new ones. He stepped close, reached for her, stopped. What if they're right about optics? Not about you. About me. About the company. What if I ask hundreds of people who depend on me to carry the weight of my choice? Maya squeezed water from lace. You don't ask them, she said. You carry it. That's the job you were born into, isn't it? He smiled without joy. And the job you weren't. I wasn't born into any job, she said, draping lace over a chair back. I took them. I survived them. I know what I am when rooms turn. Do you? He flinched because the question was fair. I'm trying. I know, she said. That's why I'm still here. She touched the magnolia charm with a wet fingertip and felt the metal warm under her skin. Somewhere in town, a layout editor sized a photo to fit a column width. Somewhere else, a donor typed an email that sounded like concern and smelled like control. The city slept, but the machinery of narrative did not. Maya dried her hands, looked at Lucas, and chose the ground again. They won't stop, she said. So neither will I. He reached for her then and didn't stop. Neither will I. And still, deep in the scene where love meets the world, the word rehearsed whispered like a draft he couldn't find, and the first hairline crack held, waiting for the next pressure to widen it. Charleston's rumor mill spun like a ceiling fan in July, lazy to the eye, violent at the edges. By breakfast, the society page had run 2 photos from the museum, one of Charlotte Avery greeting Lucas Whitmore beneath a gilt arch. Old friends reaffirm civic ties. And just beneath it, Maya Williams caught in a beam of chandelier light, the magnolia pendant bright against emerald silk. New face at the Gibbies raises eyebrows. The caption did what captions do, told a story designed to be believed before it was read. Downtown, Lucas faced a mahogany table lined with men who measured care in basis points. They didn't say Maya's name. They said optics, stability, fiduciary duty. They said, the street is skittish. And, partnerships rely on predictability. Lucas listened, jaw tight. He didn't argue, he recorded. There is a kind of fury that takes notes. Back on Meeting Street, Eleanor Whitmore took tea with Charlotte in the blue sitting room where the air always smelled faintly of violets and old victories. Charlotte, immaculate in dove gray, flicked through the society page without creasing it. Doubt is slow, she said, placing the paper on a silver tray. But it eats through anything unsealed. Then we feed it, Eleanor replied, eyes like polished stone. Not scandal. Not yet. Suspicion. A woman can drown a city with thimbles of that. They set the next move the way generals plot terrain, a luncheon at the Garrison Conservatory, glass walls, orchids, excellent acoustics for gentle barbs. Invitations went out with embossed lilies and carefully curated guest lists. A photographer who loved candids was given a seat, and a particular monogrammed handkerchief, LW, on starched white, was pressed, folded, and made to carry a secret it had never known, a dried magnolia petal, the exact flower Lucas had once tucked behind Maya's ear in the back garden. Clara caught wind of it the way house staff learn storms, in the sudden hush when they enter a room, in the way a door sits almost, never quite, closed. She found Maya by the service gate, the jacket on her shoulders despite the heat. They're not coming at you straight, Clara warned. They'll stage a kindness that looks like care and frames you like consequence. Don't take what isn't yours. Don't hold what they hand you. Maya touched the small gold charm at her throat. They want me to flinch, she said. I won't. Then keep your hands empty, Clara said, and pressed a clean linen square into Maya's palm, unmarked, unmonogrammed. If yours falls, you'll know it's yours. The Garrison Conservatory glittered with noon sun. Orchids hung like chandeliers that had forgotten how to be crystal. The sound of ice against Waterford carried under birdsong like a sotto voce metronome. Maya entered on Lucas's arm in a simple navy dress Clara had pressed to a knife's edge. Heads turned the way compass needles twitch around true north. Eleanor kissed the air beside cheeks. Charlotte arrived half a beat later in powder blue, her smile so gracious the room leaned toward it. Places were taken, napkins unfurled, and the choreography began, stories with compliments for daggers, questions without marks at the end. "You hold yourself beautifully," murmured a judge's wife to Maya. "So rare to see such poise, acquired so quickly. She moves like she's rehearsed it." Someone breathed, just loud enough to travel. The word found Lucas and nested where last night's worry had slept. Through it all, Maya kept her hands in her lap or lightly on her water glass, exactly as Clara had said. Twice, a server passed too close. Once, the hem of a linen cloth snagged near her chair. She refused every small invitation to fumble. She refused to be edited. Dessert arrived, lemon tart, cut with the precision of a verdict. In the hush between plates, something soft slid from Maya's lap to the gleaming floor, a folded white square. She hadn't felt it fall. She hadn't placed it there. Yet there it lay, crisp as accusation. A waiter bent, but Lucas was faster. He reached for it, turned it in his fingers, and saw the initials, LW, stitched in navy. His monogram. He unfolded the linen. A pressed magnolia petal flaked in his palm. Whispers stirred, feigning surprise the way actors feign spontaneity. "How intimate," a banker's wife said, as if surprised by her own cruelty. "In public?" Another voice, closer. "She's careless." Maya stood before anyone else could narrate her. "That is not mine," she said, clear even. "Someone put it there." She held up her own plain square, unmarked, held since Clara's warning, and laid it on the table like evidence. "This one is." Charlotte leaned toward Eleanor, sympathy painted with the surgeon's hand. "She wants the story to be planted," she whispered for the two tables near enough to hear. "But sometimes a woman writes her own scandal without knowing she's the author." Eleanor's mouth didn't move. Her eyes did. They slid to Lucas. He met them, then looked away. The luncheon staggered on a few polite minutes before mercy, if it was mercy, let people stand. Hands were shaken. A donor joked at the wrong time. Someone praised the orchids. Maya walked beside Lucas through a corridor of glass and leaves that magnified the heat. In the parking court, the air turned honest and ugly. In the car, others spoke until the oaks on South Battery began to flick by like metronomes. Lucas held the handkerchief in his fist, then loosened it as if it had teeth. "I didn't put it there," Maya said first, "because truth is a muscle that weakens if you wait." "I know what you said," he answered, voice controlled, the way a dam is controlled, until it isn't. "Someone wants you to see me through their hands," she pressed. "Don't oblige them." He stared at the white cloth, at the petal that had been a moment between them and was now a prop. "It's my monogram, Maya. It's also their party," she said. "Their table. Their photographer. Their timing." He closed his eyes. "Every time I think we've outrun it, something else." He stopped, jaw working. "They are relentless. So be more so," she said, softer than the sentence deserved. "You said love was a choice. Choose. A beat. 2. He opened his eyes and looked at her like a man reading a blueprint in rain. "I want to," he said. "God, I want to. But doubt is loud right now." "Then turn it down," she said. "Or it will drown us." He didn't answer. The town car rolled past live oaks and iron gates toward Meeting Street's white facade. He tucked the handkerchief into his jacket like evidence he hated and couldn't throw away. Eleanor and Charlotte took brandy in the study with the curtains half drawn against the righteous afternoon. The room smelled of leather, smoke, and the kind of contentment that comes when a plan survives contact with its target. "He looked at it," Charlotte said, savoring each syllable. "He felt it. That's all we needed." "Images are tyrants," Eleanor replied. "They do not negotiate like words." "Then we move to the next," Charlotte said. "Not a token this time. A tableau." Eleanor's eyebrow lifted the width of a blade. You have a man in mind. Of course. Charlotte's smile was wintersweet. One who owes me. Charming enough to stand close. Shameless enough to be seen. In the back corridor, Clara paused with a stack of folded towels and felt the temperature of the house drop a degree. She didn't need the names to know the shape. She went to Maya's small room beneath the eaves and found her seated on the neat coverlet, hands clasped around the magnolia charm as if warming it could melt a plan. They're not finished, Clara said. I know, Maya answered. They never are. They'll try to make him see what isn't there, Clara warned. They'll build the picture for him. Then I'll stand where the camera can't lie, Maya said, lifting her chin. And if it does, I'll tell the truth until the film burns. Clara sat beside her. Telling the truth is a long road. Maya nodded. I brought walking shoes. Outside, Charleston pretended at civility beneath an honest heat. Inside, the Whitmore house adjusted its mirrors for the next scene. Somewhere a phone buzzed with a name Maya didn't know yet, Henry Alcott, and a time. Somewhere else, a photographer cleaned a lens. In Lucas's study, the monogrammed handkerchief lay on the desk like a summons. He stared at it until the letters blurred and the petal looked like ash. He loved a woman who would not bow. He hated a world that wanted her bent. Between those two certainties, doubt threaded itself like wire. And doubt, once strung, waits only for tension. The week's heat broke in a late afternoon squall, rain smearing Charleston's cobblestones to black glass, thunder pacing the harbor like a restless guard. Lucas texted that he'd be home late. The board had called an unscheduled session. Maya stayed at the estate, taking shelter in the only room that ever softened for her, the library. She lit a single lamp, the old kind with a brass chain, and let the pool of light hold her while the storm drummed the windows. She didn't hear the door open over the rain. Miss Williams, a voice said, smooth as a handshake that lasts 1 second too long. At last we meet without an audience. Henry Alcott stood in the doorway, rain darkening the shoulders of his tailored suit, smile lazy, eyes busy. The son of a family that rented its yachts for charity photos, and its conscience to anyone who paid on time. I didn't realize you were a guest, Maya said, keeping the lamp between them. I'm a friend, he said, stepping inside. Of the family. Of Charlotte. Of anyone worth knowing in this town. He let his gaze flick to the necklace, as if he'd been told to find it. And of you if you'll allow it. I won't, she said without heat. If you're here for Mrs. Whitmore or for Charlotte, tell them I'm not leaving. He drifted closer, not so much walking as erasing distance. They don't deserve you, he murmured. A house like this eats good people. Let me be blunt, men like Lucas don't protect what they love. They display it, and then they watch it burn. Lucas is not like you, Maya said. And I don't need your protection. Everyone needs something, Henry said, reaching as if to touch the spine of a book directly behind her. His hand brushed the back of her fingers. Accident, if you photographed it right. Maya's jaw locked. Move your hand. Come now. He lowered his voice, dipped his head so that from the doorway it would look like a secret. Give Charleston what it already expects to see. Step back, she said. He didn't. The door opened. Maya. Lucas stood on the threshold, rain on his shoulders, board meeting abandoned for a resolve that had felt heroic in the car. The resolve died between one heartbeat and the next. In the lamplight he saw the pose Charlotte had ordered like a monogram. Henry, too close. Maya, hand just pulling away, a tableau made to be mistaken. Henry straightened with theatrical calm. Lucas, he said lightly, the single word a smirk. Forgive the intrusion. The library is a refuge in a storm. Get out, Lucas said. Henry dipped his head, as if this were a gentleman's disagreement about cards. Of course. He slid past, leaving rain and cologne and the afterimage of a lie behind him. Silence swelled. The storm rolled over the roof. It isn't what you saw, Maya said first. He cornered me. Every time, Lucas said, and the control in his voice hurt worse than a shout. Every time there's another scene. Another story. Another angle that looks exactly like what they say. What they say, she repeated, anger steadying her hands. Not what I am. He stared at the lamp's thin gold halo around the magnolia charm. You asked me to ignore what I saw. I'm asking you to remember who I am while you're deciding what you saw. His eyes closed. When he opened them, they were tired the way men get tired when they're losing arguments to themselves. I promise to trust you. And I've done nothing to make that promise hard, she said. They have. He inhaled ragged. Love without trust is a kind of torment. Then choose, she said, the words simple as a step. Me in truth. Or them in comfort. The thunder answered for him. He pressed his fingers to his eyes as if he could pinch doubt shut and feel relief. It didn't work. I need time, he said. She straightened. Time does not make cowards braver. It just makes the room larger. I need time, he said again, softer, like a confession. She moved aside, creating a space for him to pass that also said she wouldn't be the one to leave. He walked out. The lamp hummed in the quiet. Maya's breath came back in pieces. She found Clara in the back corridor, the older woman's apron damp with rain she hadn't had time to shake off. They staged it, Maya said. In the library? I know, Clara said. Servants see what silence thinks it's hiding. He walked in on a picture painted for him. I told him to choose, Maya said. The steadiness broke on the last word. Clara cupped Maya's cheek with a work-rough hand. Men raised to care what rooms think take longer to hear what hearts know. Give him a minute. Then give him a mirror. What kind of mirror? Proof, Clara said. Or a lie that confesses itself. Eleanor poured brandy with the precision of a surgeon dosing mercy. Charlotte sat opposite, legs crossed at the ankle, hair immaculate despite the storm. He saw them? Eleanor asked, not hungry, merely confirming the recipe. He saw a story, Charlotte said, smiling with only half her mouth. The only kind that sticks. The kind you feel before you can argue. Very good, Eleanor said, and if there was a tremor in her hand as she set down the decanter, either woman named it. One more pressure, and the glass will go. Tomorrow's Spring Gala committee breakfast, Charlotte replied. He'll sit beside men who call themselves stewards while they practice cowardice with silver spoons. Eleanor let herself look pleased, a muscle she didn't exercise often. You should have been my daughter. I would have made a terrifying pair with Lucas, Charlotte said lightly. You already do, Eleanor answered. By morning, the house had swallowed the storm and replaced it with the brightness of a city pretending at clean starts. The servants moved with their usual quiet velocity. The Post and Courier printed a puff piece about preservation easements and tucked a photograph into the inside pages that showed Charlotte at the museum, all grace, and Maya 2 steps behind, out of focus, necklace a bright pin the caption didn't bother to name. Lucas ate nothing at breakfast. He read nothing. He held the coffee cup like a prop that proved he still occupied his life. Eleanor watched from the far end of the table, maternal concern ironed into her napkin. Busy day? She asked, conversational, as if she hadn't staged a war. The gala committee, he said. Then a financing call. Stay the entire breakfast, she said. They worry when you run. He stood. They'll worry regardless. Lucas, she said, stopping him with a tone that had worked on juries and editors for 20 years. He looked back. You know what you saw last night. I know what I saw, he said. I don't know what it was. Call it instinct, she said gently, the poison wrapped in gauze. Instinct protects men like you. Don't apologize for it. He left without answering. Eleanor allowed herself one small exhale, like a woman relieved a fever had finally chosen a direction. Maya didn't wait for the house to tell her its version of the night. She went to the row house on Vanderhorst, the key still under the ceramic turtle, the room still smelling like cotton and rain. She sat at the kitchen table and wrote 3 names on a notepad: photographer, server, Henry Alcott. She underlined the last one. She wasn't naive enough to expect an apology. She was practical enough to hunt a seam that would split if pulled. Clara arrived with a paper bag that held 2 biscuits and a folded slip of information. "The photographer from the museum," Clara said, setting down the bag. "Name's Dugan. Charlotte's favorite. He was at the luncheon, too. He drinks at Mulligan's on Broad after jobs and runs his mouth when the beer's cold." Maya smiled despite everything. "You're wasted as a housekeeper." "I was a girl who listened before I was a woman who dusted," Clara said. "Word gets drunk before it gets careful." Maya ate half a biscuit she couldn't taste and tucked the name into her pocket. "If I can prove they staged it." "You won't prove it to Charleston," Clara warned. "But you might prove it to one man." "That's all I need right now," Maya said. The gala committee breakfast performed tradition like a hymn everyone knew by heart: grapefruit halves with cherries, eggs and silver, a blessing that asked God to sanctify the art of giving other people's money good names. Lucas sat beside 2 men who owned squares on the city and believed that justified owning its stories. One leaned over, conversational as weather. "Saw a picture in the paper," he said. "Generous of you to escort Miss Avery." Reassuring. Lucas didn't correct him. The man continued. "Hope you'll be wise about the rest." "The rest?" Lucas asked. "The maid," the man said softly, as if decency were a volume knob. "Everyone respects your charity. But stability is a duty." Lucas set his fork down. "My duty," he said, "is not on your plate." The man blinked, surprised that steel had interrupted silver. Lucas stood before the toast. He didn't stay for applause. Outside, the air smelled like wet brick and a morning reset. He wanted to go to the row house, to say "I'm sorry I hesitated," to say "I know you," to say nothing and be forgiven anyway. Instead, he texted a single sentence: "Meet me at the Oak after lunch." It wasn't enough. It had to be. Maya found Dugan at Mulligan's, just like Clara promised, camera bag at his feet, beer sweating into the ring of other beers. She didn't flirt. She didn't threaten. She bought him 2 orders of fries and asked about light. Photographers like to talk about light. He talked about angles, too, and how donors preferred their generosity at 3/4 profile. He talked about how Charlotte always found her lens without looking, as if someone had taught her where cameras lived. He bragged about the luncheon shot where the maid fumbled a handkerchief. And then, greedy for credit, about the library, where he just happened to be in the corridor when Lucas opened the door. "How did you know to be there?" Maya asked, voice mild. He grinned. "Tips," he said. "Friends in high places." She slid a card across the table. "If you like money as much as you like credit, send me every shot from the last week, time-stamped. Especially the ones no one asked to print." She placed a folded check on top of the card. More than a tip, less than a bribe, exactly the price of pride. Dugan hesitated, looked at the check, looked at her, and shrugged. "Art deserves a patron," he said, and pocketed both. Outside, the sky had cleared to ruthless blue. Maya walked fast, not because she was afraid, but because momentum was a kind of faith. Her phone buzzed. "Meet me at the Oak after lunch." She typed, "I'll be there." She was early. The oak's shadow cut the grass into geometry, the kind you learned to live inside when life demanded straight lines. She touched the magnolia charm and made herself breathe. Lucas came across the lawn with the look of a man who had spent all morning arguing with a mirror and losing. He stopped an arm's length away. "I should have trusted you," he said. No preface. No hedging. "In the library? In the conservatory. Every room since the first one." The apology landed and warmed and hurt. "You don't have to apologize for being human," she said. "You do have to stop using it as an alibi." He nodded once. "If you have proof." "I have a beginning," she said. "A photographer who sells his angles. A man who shows up in convenient corridors. Names that rhyme when you say them together." "And if I don't need proof?" he asked, voice rough. If I just need to be the man I said I was when I stood in that dining room? Then be him, she said. Now. He reached for her hand. She let him hold it. The live oak kept its own counsel. Somewhere inside the house, Eleanor drew a curtain and watched her son from a window she had chosen for its view of victories. Charlotte, elsewhere, read a text from Dugan that said a client had paid double and replied with a single word that could have meant anything: interesting. The war of whispers had found its loudest day yet. And still, under the oak, on ground chosen rather than granted, two people held on while a city tried to right them. The files arrived just after dawn, an email from Dugan with a link and a subject line that read, "For your records." Maya and Clara sat shoulder to shoulder at the small row-house table while thumbnails loaded like a deck being dealt by an impatient dealer. "Go slow," Clara said. "Proof likes patience." They opened the luncheon sequence first. Frame by frame, the conservatory bloomed back to life, orchids hanging like chandeliers, glass walls holding the noon, a corridor of faces arranged into politeness. Then there. A shot through the reflection of a pane, a server's hand at Maya's chair, the hem of a linen cloth lifted just high enough for something to slide beneath. In the same reflection, a second hand hovered at the edge of the frame, two fingers extended in a signal as old as theater. Clara leaned in. Zoom. Maya pinched the screen. The second hand wore a distinct ring, oval sapphire, flanked by two slender diamonds, catching light like a signature. "Avery," Clara breathed. "Her mother had me polish it for a tea last spring. Same stone. Same setting." The EXIF timestamp blinked at the bottom. 12 hours 48 minutes and 6 seconds. 3 minutes before dessert. 8 minutes before the fall. They opened the library sequence next. Henry Alcott entering alone at 4 hours 17 minutes and 8 seconds, rain striping his shoulders. A burst of 3 images, his head angling in, his hand brushing Maya's palm rising between them like a stop sign. Then Lucas at the doorway, 4 hours 21 minutes and 34 seconds, caught in a slice of lamplight. The exact interval a trap requires. Clara exhaled slowly. "A net woven on schedule. Enough?" Maya asked. "Enough for a man who wants the truth," Clara said. "Never enough for a city that loves the story it bought." "Then I'll take the man," Maya said, and forwarded the link to Lucas with a single line: "Choose the truth before you open these, or after. But choose." Lucas did not open the files in his office. He didn't need the desk between him and what mattered. He walked them back to Meeting Street, and up the study stairs 2 at a time like a boy late for a reckoning he refused to miss. He stopped at the threshold, knuckles white on the doorframe, and forced himself to look first out the window, to the oak, to the lawn, to the ground where he had asked to meet her, and she had come. Then he tapped. Conservatory, 12 hours 48 minutes and 6 seconds, blue sapphire in the glass, the hem lifted, the white square sliding into place like a lie that expected applause. Library, 4 hours 17 minutes and 8 seconds, Henry leaning in, 4 hours 21 minutes and 34 seconds, his own face, stiff with a certainty he now despised. He closed the laptop. The feeling in his chest wasn't relief. It was anger with direction. He made 4 calls, to the board chair. Emergency PR consult in the dining hall. 1 hour. To House Counsel. Bring the Foundation's charter and a spine. To security. Our guest list will be flexible. And to Maya. Be with me when I do this. Then he dialed a 5th number he'd never used before. "Miss Avery," he said when Charlotte answered, smooth as always. "My mother and I would value your counsel. 1 hour. "Of course," Charlotte said, and hung up smiling at her reflection. They assembled beneath the chandelier that had watched the first rip. The board chair. 2 advisors. The family's lawyer. Eleanor at the head of the table, pearls precise. Charlotte beside her, immaculate, sapphire ring faint under the lights. Henry materialized as if invitations were implied. Dugan lingered in the doorway until security motioned him in. He clutched his camera bag like a shield. Maya entered with Lucas and took the chair at his right. No jacket this time. No hiding. The magnolia lay against clean white cotton like a seal pressed into wax. Thank you for coming, Lucas said, voice steady. I called this to discuss reputation. Mine. This house's. And the weaponizing of both against a woman I intend to marry. The board chair shifted. Lucas. You'll have your turn, Lucas said without looking away from Eleanor. Mother, you taught me that narrative shapes value. Today we reset both. Eleanor's mouth curved. If you've brought us here for a lecture on loyalty, at least serve coffee. I've brought you here for a demonstration, he said, and nodded to the screen the houseman had wheeled in. Image 1, the conservatory, time stamp glowing in the corner, the reflection sharpened so even the orchids seemed to hold their breath. The hem lifted. The square slid. The sapphire flashed. Charlotte didn't flinch. She had practiced stillness since cotillion. Eleanor tipped her head. You're aiming at reflections now? How modern. Image 2, Lucas said. Henry entering. The slow, ugly burst of proximity. Maya's open palm. Lucas in the doorway. Henry laughed once, lightly. Lenses lie, Lucas. EXIF doesn't, Counsel said dry. Nor does chain of custody. Mr. Dugan? Dugan swallowed. Time stamps are intact. Charlotte folded her hands. The sapphire ring winked once. You'll build a scandal out of glass and metadata? She asked, tone almost pitying. Lucas, Charleston doesn't read code. It reads posture. Then read this, Lucas said, and turned, not to the screen, not to Charlotte, but to the only person whose verdict mattered to him. I chose the wrong thing at the library. I chose the picture over the person. That ends now. He faced the table. Maya Williams is not a story you can edit. She's the truth I failed to hold long enough in front of you. If you require more, the photographer you prefer followed tips from a number tied to Miss Avery's assistant. The luncheon handkerchief was introduced before dessert by a server whose hours are paid by the garrisons and, on retainer, the Avery's event fund. Mr. Alcott entered a private room uninvited at the request of a mutual friend. He looked at Charlotte until the adjective burned. An attempted intimacy not offered. That's trespass in a house I control. You control, do you? Eleanor said softly, and finally there was heat beneath her eyes. I do, he said. And I'm done pretending stewardship means letting cowardice set the table. Counsel cleared his throat. As to reputational risk, Mr. Whitmore is prepared to resign his chair if pressed. I'm not resigning, Lucas said, and every head snapped. I'm refusing your premise. Protecting the Whitmore name has never meant endorsing its worst habits. He turned to the board chair. If investors choose fear, we'll build without them. My father raised me to make things that last. That includes rooms a decent person can stand in. Charlotte's smile flickered, then fixed. You've made a speech, she said. Will you also make a mess? You can't fire a city. I can ban a trespasser, Lucas said, eyes on Henry. Consider yourself unwelcome on this property. Security will have your notice in writing. Henry smirked. You can't. We can, Counsel said, brisk. And will. Mr. Dugan, Lucas continued. You'll sign over unedited sequences from the museum and the luncheon. Your future access depends on it. If you refuse, we litigate. If you comply, you will never again be hired by this house. Dugan looked at the camera bag, then at Charlotte, then at the floor. I'll send the originals, he said. Pride loses quickly when invoices are at stake. And you, Lucas said at last, turning to Charlotte. You owe no apology, I expect to believe. But you will leave my house. Charlotte rose with the poise of a woman who intends to repurpose humiliation into gossip by dinner. Men in love mistake ultimatums for courage, she said, the ring glinting a farewell. They burn faster than you think. She passed Maya without looking. That, too, was a choice. Eleanor did not stand. She let the room empty, board chair, counsel, photographer, until only four remained, Eleanor, Lucas, Maya, Clara at the door because Clara understood that some wars require witnesses. "Are you finished?" Eleanor asked, and if her voice shook, only Clara heard it. "No," Lucas said. "But I'm done choosing you over the truth." For a heartbeat, the air held 50 years of marriage, birth, death, legacy, loss, a maid's kindness, a wife's fear, a son trying to grow taller than both. Eleanor's hand moved, a small, involuntary reach toward the portrait over the mantel that she did not complete. When she spoke, the words came like glass placed deliberately on a shelf. "You look like him when you are stubborn," she said. "And I look like myself when I am right," he answered. Eleanor turned at last to Maya. Her gaze landed on the necklace. "She wore it every day," she said, the pronoun refusing a name. "She did," Maya said. "And she never once asked your permission to keep her dignity." Eleanor's mouth pressed in. "You will destroy him," she said, not a threat, a fear brought into the light. "No," Maya said. "I will build with him. Perhaps not what you wanted. Perhaps something better." Silence. Then Eleanor stood, the pearls at her throat suddenly heavy. "Then build without my blessing," she said, and left the room. Clara stepped aside to let her pass. In the space Eleanor left, the house exhaled, no triumph, only a shift. Lucas faced Maya. "I should have done it sooner," he said. "You did it now," she answered. "That's when it counts." He took a breath, reached into his pocket, and closed his fingers around onyx. "I don't have the ring you deserve yet," he said, opening his palm to reveal a cufflink, the one he had pocketed the night they left the dining hall. "But this has been mine since I was 19. Take it until we choose the one we build together." Maya smiled, small and fierce. She set the onyx in her palm next to the magnolia, two dark stones catching the same slice of light. "Fine," she said. "But we choose it on a day that belongs to us, not to them." "Today belongs to us," he said. "Then ask," she said. He did. Not with a speech. Not with a room full of witnesses. Just under the oak, on ground they had named, his voice steady again the way it had been the first night he said "I love her" and meant it like a line you build a house on. "Yes," she said, because some answers are inevitable once you've learned to stand. The city did what cities do. It found a new rumor by supper. The Post and Courier ran a column about changing tides that mentioned neither names nor necklaces but included a photograph of a live oak and the caption, "Legacy, Reconsidered." Dugan sent the originals and a terse apology that was really a receipt. Henry left for Savannah. Charlotte did not return calls for a week, then hosted a luncheon whose guest list looked like a petition. Eleanor cancelled 2 evenings and had the magnolia tree nearest the front walk pruned with ruthless precision. In the weeks that followed, Lucas moved his chair at the Whitmore Foundation and added 2 more around the table, one with Maya's name on a brass plate. Clara took a new title that included the word steward, because that was what she had been all along. The museum accepted a gift for a community gallery, and did not ask for a naming right. Maya drafted its mission and refused to make it pretty, a room where those who carry the city can see themselves on the walls. There were still rooms that asked questions she could not answer without losing something. She chose her ground. She walked in anyway. On a warm evening, months later, the row house smelled like cotton again, and the city sounded like itself. The magnolia charm lay against her skin, the onyx cufflink tucked in a small dish by the sink until the jeweler finished what they'd designed, a ring that held both stones in a setting that didn't look like anyone else's idea of tradition. Lucas stood at the stove, burning the first pancake and laughing like a man who had learned that some mistakes cost nothing and taste better the second time. He looked up and saw her in the doorway. "Ready?" he asked. "For the room?" she said. "Or the rest of it?" "Both," he said. She took his hand. Outside, the oak kept its counsel. Inside, they crossed a threshold neither of them had been invited to, because they had built it, hinge by hinge, out of truth held in public and love chosen on purpose.